Let me get your reaction to this. This is a report coming out of one of the most heavily vaxxed counties in America. It's King County in Washington. That's Seattle, a population of over 2 million people. 98% of the people in King County, Washington, took at least one COVID shot. And this is a peer-reviewed study. I believe Dr. Peter McCullough is one of the co-authors. I'm not 100% sure. Forgive me for that, but it's a peer-reviewed study. It's found a 1,236% surge in excess heart attack deaths among King County's 2.2 million residents. So in 2020, 11 excess heart attack deaths. In 2021, 75 excess heart attack deaths. 2022, 111 excess heart attack deaths. 2023, 147 excess heart attack deaths. That's a 1,236% increase compared to 2020. The vaccine, the smoking gun. What do you think? Your thoughts?
Well, unfortunately, it's easy to see. I mean, our volunteers surfaced what's causing the heart attacks. It's so sad. Uh, there are a number of mechanisms, and Dr. McCullough has identified some of them, and our team has identified some of them. But basically, the lipid nanoparticles and the spike protein cause the heart not to process signals to beat normally, right? And, like my mom she allows me to say this, tachycardia after her first Moderna booster. Well, our team, Dr. Chris Flowers, found that the lipid nanoparticles degrade the myelin sheath of the nerves in the nervous system. So all the electrical impulses that keep things working normally, including your heart rate, can be negatively affected by that. But also there's so much blood damage in the Pfizer papers. And what the lipid nanoparticles do, as I mentioned, is they coalesce in room temperature. So I believe, and I'm not a doctor, that and there's so much like damage to blood vessels, right? So you're getting blood that is kind of thickened going through the heart. The heart has to work harder, and John O'Looney and other morticians are finding actual like fibrous clots in the veins of people. I'm persuaded, and I haven't sent any of this off to be analyzed. I don't have those tissues, but I hope they do analyze them. But the lipid nanoparticles they're an industrial plastic almost. So I'm worried that they're literally coalescing inside the body and causing heart damage. But there are a number of mechanisms that could be causing heart attacks and strokes. But what we do know for sure, we know what some of the mechanisms are in the Pfizer papers, and we know for sure that Pfizer knew and the FDA knew that strokes and heart attacks and heart damage of all kinds would be among the top side effects, not what they put on the CDC website or in your doctor's office. Fever, maybe you'll have fatigue, joint pain. Pain at the injection site. No, the side effects in the Pfizer papers are catastrophic: heart damage, neurological damage, strokes, and so on.
The book reveals a new disease. It's called COVAX disease. Could you talk for a few minutes about what that is specifically?
Yes. So this is Dr. Robert Chandler, who has named, what doctors are seeing as a constellation of symptoms, and often, always practically, they'll tell their patients, we don't know what's causing the fatigue, the joint pain, the kidney damage, the liver damage, the neurological damage. They'll never say it's caused by the vaccine, and that's for a lot of reasons. Dr. James Thorpe, who's not on our team, but he's a brave maternal fetal medicine specialist, has found with his wife Maggie, a lawyer, that millions went to medical organizations to have them follow a script, which is the CDC script of safe and effective. And they have to give them money back if any of their doctors do not follow the script. So people are not being told the truth about the damage that they're experiencing when they consult their doctors. But COVAX disease is the first effort to name that constellation, or that I'm aware, that constellation of symptoms that is caused by the vaccine.
Let's talk about some of the flaws in the clinical trial. And specifically, I mean, this one just jumps out 95% of the placebo group was vaccinated. This is by March of 2021. I mean, if you're going to try and cover something up, you destroy the placebo group, which they did. I mean, just give me your impressions about that.
90, yeah, right. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist. I'm an English major, but I took eighth grade science, and we all know that a real study involves a group with the intervention and a control group, and that's how you do science. But what Pfizer did, among the many examples of hideous non-science in Pfizer papers, is that they had the intervention group that got the injection, they had the placebo group that got saline, and then they vaccinated the placebo group. And what that does, so they got rid of the control group. And what that does, of course, is now over time, you're not going to have the risk that the vaccinated group will get sick over time and the unvaccinated group will stay healthy. They got rid of the evidence basically by doing this completely insane, unscientific thing of vaccinating the control group. There's something else in terms of bad. I mean, bad is an understatement. Evil non-science that Pfizer did that people should know. They hid the bodies of 8 people who were vaccinated who died with COVID. And they didn't report them, which is illegal. They didn't report them to the FDA. And they did this so that they could falsely claim that you're more likely, you remember these news stories, you're more likely to die or be hospitalized if you're unvaccinated of COVID than if you're vaccinated. When if they had done the math correctly and kept those 8 dead people in there, they would have had to report to the FDA, and the FDA would have to report to us that, in fact, you're more likely to get hospitalized and die with COVID if you're vaccinated, which is what the data now show.
I just want to share something. I'm sure you're familiar with this, and also with my listeners. This is a systematic review of autopsy findings and deaths after COVID-19 vaccination. Authors Paul Alexander, William Mackes, Mark Trozzi, Harvey Risch, Dr. Peter McCullough, again, all medical doctors. And the conclusion: the consistency seen among cases in this review with known COVID-19 vaccine mechanisms of injury and death, coupled with autopsy confirmation by physician adjudication, suggests there is a high likelihood of a causal link between COVID-19 vaccines and death. Further urgent investigation is required for the purpose of clarifying our findings. It's interesting because this study was initially, I think, very heavily censored, and now it's been peer reviewed.
Right.
What does that indicate to you, that now something like this study, a review of these autopsies, 678 studies, 44 papers, 325 autopsy cases, these are now coming to see the light of day?
I mean, I'm very cynical about it. What it says to me is that RFK Jr. has been tapped to run HHS, and that he's going to be in a position to disclose the millions of dollars that flowed to academic and scientific journals from pharma to censor findings such as these, and which is unethical, if not criminal, because it's fraud, right? So that's what it says to me. People are racing, like Robert Redfield, former CDC director, I believe, or is it director?
Yes.
Yeah. Racing to kind of get out in front of the disclosure train, the transparency train, now that, Trump has been elected, and now that Maha has joined MAGA, Make America Healthy Again. And it's disgusting, but it's predictable. And I hope that RFK Jr. gets in and is confirmed without much of a fight, because American people deserve daylight. These forms of fraud are not trivial. They endangered. They're killing millions of people. They sterilized millions of people. I don't know if they're killing millions of people. They're killing surely tens of thousands of people. And the corruption of our medical and FDA establishment is so comprehensive that we're were really not safe. I mean, it explains so much about why America is so unhealthy. And there's no one better positioned to understand that and to go after, corruption in the regulatory agencies than RFK Jr.
So let's talk about, we talked about the clinical trial flaws, some of them. Now let's talk about the regulatory failures because, the FDA, did they ignore these flaws? Were they not aware of these flaws?
No, I mean, this is what people can't believe. Let me try to say it again. All of these documents were in the custody of the FDA. It was the FDA's job to read them before concluding that they would give Pfizer an emergency use authorization, right? Many of the documents say FDA confidential at the bottom. So, it's 450,000 documents, none of them detailing anything going right. I mean, Pfizer knew by November of 2020 that the vaccine didn't work to stop COVID. So the whole thing that followed was based on a lie. It was all farcical, all the mandates, all the kids forbidden to play sports, all the people who died alone because their loved ones were unvaccinated, my being prevented from walking into a restaurant in New York City. It was all based on a lie and they knew it. So I'm not sure how to say this any more clearly, but the FDA read this catastrophic attack on human beings and waved it through. I mean, this is why I now try to do everything I can to learn about natural remedies and to keep myself healthy so that I never, ever, ever have to take a pharmaceutical drug or be in a hospital because God willing, because the FDA doesn't clearly from this example, and your readers will conclude this, reading the book, did nothing to stop us from getting poisoned.
Could you explain what the PrEP Act is and how it shields vaccine manufacturers?
Sure. The PrEP Act is a Reagan era, as I recall, law that was ushered in nominally to make it easier to get vaccines to market and save lives, quote unquote. But really, what it does is, in a very anomalous way, it shields pharmaceutical companies who are making vaccines from any kind of accountability through litigation. They have basic impunity. You can really never sue them, right? Like when we tried to sue Pfizer, we couldn't because of the PrEP Act. So we had to sue the White House. But basically, imagine if automobiles, you couldn't sue a car manufacturer if they made a car that exploded or that the brakes failed. We'd live in such a hazardous world if other industries were protected from liability the way that pharmaceuticals and vaccine manufacturers specifically are protected from liability.
Can we explore maybe a broader theme here and how this vaccine policy has become a threat to democracy?
Sure. That's an interesting question. Well, one important thing that the PrEP Act did, and also the fact that America is alone, along with New Zealand, in allowing direct-to-consumer marketing of pharmaceutical products and medications, is that it means that pretty much all or most legacy media is funded by pharma. And you get this in America, probably in New Zealand too, not in other countries. When you watch television, which I rarely do, and it's like every 10 minutes, it's like, ask your doctor about blah, 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 blah. Blah, this could cause you to die, could cause your head to explode, but ask your doctor about this. And those are not really ads that have any real purpose. Like what's the point of asking your doctor about this or that medication? Presumably your doctor should know how to treat you. The purpose of those ads is to give a justification for pharma companies to fund media, right? To fund the legacy media. And as a result, legacy media makes most of its money from those ads or from the sponsorship of the pharmaceutical industry. And during COVID and leading up to COVID, it was through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, giving money to the BBC Millions, to the New York Times, to NPR, to overcome vaccine hesitancy. And then after that, through the CARES Act, not just to legacy media, but to churches and synagogues and barbershops in Harlem and community trusted messengers and, moms and dads with little, groups that used to be anti-vax and are now pro-vax. They funded everybody, right, except for a few independent news outlets like yours and mine. And the goal of all of that funding was to cover up critical stories, to silence critics, to smear critics, to make sure the other side never got aired, and that stories about these dangers never got commissioned or published or put on the airwaves. So that's one way it suppresses democracy. I think another way it suppresses democracy is that both sides of the aisle take pharma funding. And that's why you've seen both Republicans and Democrats. I mean, even Rand Paul, whom I otherwise kind of like, he literally gives Fauci a slap on the wrist, every time he hauls him up for some dramatic confrontation. No one's gone to prison, no one's in trouble. The Justice Department, I mean, maybe that'll change with Trump being sworn in, knock wood, but a lot of these harms have been surfaced by us for 2 years, and now and no one's in prison still. So I guess those are two ways I can think of that this situation harms democracy.